This is just a spectacle, not trying to solve problems, but to feed grievances and keep Americans angry.
He looks like an alien. He definitely seems to be living on another planet.
That's the problem of kind of the modern era, is that we don't roll up our sleeves and look and trying to figure out how to solve these problems.
100%. 100%. That's another bipartisan idea that we could do here that would actually make things better. Welcome to Political Rehab, smart politics without the hangover. I'm Matt.
And I'm Matt.
Today, the strange Supreme Court catch-22, fake news about fake news, a Democratic Tea Party, another Republican speaker meltdown, and an ugly political moment for everybody. Plus, a new feature, Up or Down, that will leave you wondering whether Vecna or 11 is winning, and our weekly That's Bullshit segment on a healthcare swindle. But let's start, as always, with our Trump dump.
Time for the Trump dump.
That's right. It's time for the Trump dump, our weekly segment where we get it all out of our system up front so we can go on and have a great show. Whether you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, it doesn't matter. There is something Trump has done this week that's pissed you off. Last week, I saw a headline that said Americans are tired of the Biden blame game. Then I saw another story claiming Trump staffers were trying to get him to stop blaming Joe Biden. And for a moment, I thought, who knows, maybe Trump actually stumbled across one of my McClatchy columns where I regularly write that it's time for Republicans to stop blaming Joe Biden and stop using him as an excuse. But apparently those reports were fake news. Because when Trump went to Pennsylvania this week, his rally was wall-to-wall Biden. He played all the greatest hits, Sleepy Joe, Crooked Joe, you name it. And I understand the instinct. Trump needs a villain, an adversary to punch, a foil to keep the narrative moving. Reality show politics require tensions, heroes, villains, and cliffhangers. But here's the problem. That routine doesn't work when you've been in office for nearly a year. At some point, you have to own the mess. You can't blame the last guy forever. And those constant Biden comparisons, they're political theater. Lipstick on a pig, a shiny distraction, sleight of hand, nothing more. And here's what really gets me and what really pisses me off. Republicans like me see Biden as a failed president whose own party kicked him off the ballot in a last-ditch effort to hold on to power. For us, doing better than Biden isn't an accomplishment. It should be the bare minimum. America deserves more, and Republicans should be the ones offering it, leading with principle, with discipline, and a clear and compelling vision for the future, not falling back on the same tired line, not hiding behind comparisons, and not using Biden did it as a political hall pass.
For one thing, I hope that Donald Trump continues to blame Sleepy Joe for his problems promptly before falling asleep in meetings. And of course, I disagree with you, especially given the volume of bipartisan legislation that Joe Biden was able to pass. He sort of self-deported from the ticket because there were issues. Take a memo there, Don. For my Trump dump, we have to talk about the grade that broke the internet.
I wonder what grade you would give
A+.
your economy. A+.
Yeah, A+++++.
First of all, look at the man's face. This is actually kind of sad. He looks like an alien. He definitely seems to be living on another planet. According to political polling this week, half of all Americans find it difficult to pay for food. And a majority, 55%, blame the Trump administration for the high prices. Yeah, no shit. Blaming Trump makes a lot of sense because just a few short weeks ago, this intergalactic asshole went to federal court to try to weasel out of helping 42 million Americans afford food. Now, more than a quarter of Americans, 27%, said that they've skipped a medical checkup because of costs within the last 2 years. More than a third, 37%, said they couldn't afford to attend a professional sports event with family or friends. And almost half say they can't pay for a vacation that involves air travel. Yeah, A+ there, Don. It was against that backdrop that this week he went to Pennsylvania to kick off his affordability tour, but he spent half his time saying once again, as he has been wont to do in recent weeks, that affordability is a Democratic Party hoax. He calls it a Democrat hoax. And then he admitted, my handlers say I'm no longer allowed to say that because guess what, Don? Your team recognizes that no one buys it. No one believes you. And then he went on to say, hey, parents, maybe what you don't need is so many toys for your kids. Have them play with sticks. Have them run around after squirrels like you deserve. It's all a big middle finger to the American people. He's making clear that he doesn't believe any of this. He doesn't buy any of it. And he has the audacity to tell people their eyes are lying to them while he spends $20 billion bailing out Argentina and hundreds of millions on his ballroom and executive bathroom. He tells people who work hard and need food that they're being dramatic while he lugs his fat ass into meetings where his minions try to kiss it while he sleeps. Yeah, middle finger to us, right back at you, bud.
I got to tell you, I once got an A++. I had to put the pluses on and change the.
Did you use a Sharpie?
I used a Sharpie, yeah.
Now that we've gotten that out of our system, let's get to our rundown. Trump gets ugly. In one of several long ranting screeds about immigration, Donald Trump this week launched his most vitriolic attack yet on America's Somalian community, describing their homeland as filthy, dirty, disgusting, and wondering why the U.S. couldn't take migrants from Scandinavia instead. I have a little clip of that.
We had a meeting, and I say, why is it we only take people from shithole countries, right? Why can't we have some people from Norway, Sweden, just a few? Let's have a few. From Denmark.
Matt, I'd like to put it to you, is this a low point in presidential history or the lowest point?
It is. Wow. When the presidency normalizes dehumanization like this, the national immune system just weakens. This is just a spectacle, not trying to solve problems, but to feed grievances and keep Americans angry. And what I understand is for those people in the audience cheering, that's unconscionable. And it comes in a week where Trump is using executive orders to take away Martin Luther King Day and Juneteenth as free holidays. It just seems to be he is on a constant attack. It's a circus built on top of dysfunction, wrapped in chaos, powered by outrage, and it quite frankly just needs to stop.
It's his entire brand is to try to stick a needle in the eye of all Americans and to try and find the sore points that make us angry, not just at him, but at each other. This is incredibly ugly. And this comes at a time where we've talked on this show about the crack up of the MAGA coalition over Tucker Carlson platforming the racist, vile anti-Semite Nick Fuentes. After, by the way, it must be said, Nick Fuentes and Kanye were invited to dinner at Mar-a-Lago, and Trump said, oh, I don't know these people, but he didn't disavow their views. He didn't say, oh, I regret inviting them. And then, of course, the national parks thing, Juneteenth, MLK Day. What do these two things have in common, especially at a time where he's extending perks for entry to national parks on his birthday? Trying to pick at America's deep racial wounds is absolutely disgusting, and we sort of tolerate it.
Yeah, and again, I go back to the fact that you have people in that audience that on a normal every day would sort of boo at this, but for whatever reason, right now they're cheering, they're moving on. It is unconscionable. Republicans should be ashamed of themselves. I want to talk a little bit about my congresswoman here in South Carolina. Now, last week, I mentioned an article where Republican women in Congress are increasingly frustrated with Mike Johnson's leadership, the dysfunction in the House, and the party culture where loyalty to Trump is mandatory, even when private doubts linger. Then there was my Congresswoman, Nancy Mace. She wrote an op-ed in the New York Times this week. And before I go much into her, if you don't know who she is, she's been in the news lately. Most recently, she was involved in a profanity-laced confrontation with airport staff at TSA and Charleston International Airport. She also has a lot of staff who keep leaving. A funny story about a year ago, 2 years ago, when her chief of staff left or fired, or he fired her, who knows. He reportedly took the office popcorn machine with him. I mean, that's how weird this gets. Anyway, in her op-ed, Mace wrote that Pelosi was a better speaker than any Republican this century. It's not lost on me that Mace is also one of the people who voted to kick out Kevin McCarthy. So this is a problem of her own doing. But Matt, was Pelosi better, or is Mike Johnson just that bad?
Pelosi was better. I will say that I worked in Congress during Nancy Pelosi's first turn as speaker. I think that the problem for you guys, for your team, is that you used to have leaders who were at the very least serious people. Paul Ryan is a serious person, a deeply intelligent person. John Boehner may not have the intellectual firepower of a Paul Ryan, but he is a very competent, able professional who, I promise you, I know this, I've witnessed it, behind closed doors could get together with Democratic Party leaders to iron things out, figure out what business they could get done together. I'm not trying to Pollyanna this, but they were serious people with serious ideas. They have been replaced with fools and clowns and people who are just hanging on for dear life. Kevin McCarthy being Exhibit 1A, no internal compass. And then there's Mike Johnson, who literally was the legal counsel for a museum depicting human beings riding dinosaurs because he believes in a literal creation from the Bible. And the problem for your party is that the House is fundamentally ungovernable because you have people like Nancy Mace who are clowns themselves. Thoughts and prayers for you guys. I mean, I'm being a little tongue in cheek, but I kind of mean it seriously. This is bad. You need to have a functional party. And
we do. And we've had this opportunity and we've completely blown it. Look, I think Pelosi, I disagree with her everything, but she ran the gavel. She was powerful. She got stuff done, something we're just not doing anymore.
Let's look at the fake news about fake news. Beginning on December 5th, parts of the White House website began labeling certain news outlets, when you know what that means, as fake news, in what many see as an escalation of institutional hostility toward press freedom. I'm euphemizing there. This is an all-out attack on unbiased factual reporting in favor of OANN, what do you people call it? And other sycophantic kiss-up fake news organizations on the right, the ones that were brought into the Pentagon when they drummed all of the regular reporters out of the room. Defend your boy.
Look, the press needs to be held accountable. It is a two-way street. And as a Republican, it feels like often there's a lot of bias against us. But here's the thing. The White House's new fake news blacklist isn't criticism of state-sponsored intimidation. The First Amendment exists precisely to prevent government from punishing dissent and labeling disabled speech as subversive. Branding journalists and outlets as enemies or fake news is just a broader drift toward executive overreach. It's a MAGA McCarthyism, a witch hunt designed to silence dissent. So I can't really defend this because even though I want to punch at the press, and look, as a strategist, I do it all the time, the reality is we function better as a country when we hold our leaders accountable. We demanded it when Obama was in office. We were outraged when they wouldn't report on Biden. But now, for some reason, we just want to turn the other way. It's hypocritical at best. It's destructive, and we should do better.
Agree with all of it. Only point I would add is that there is a myth of a liberal media bias that I have thoroughly debunked in great detail on worthknowing.substack.com. It was an intentional creation during the 1980s of right-wing activists to try to create a martyr complex. If you look at all of the metrics, all of the data, all of the numbers, and just use plain common sense, right-wing media that is essentially straight line, undiluted, propaganda and panther piss, essentially, straight into the mainline veins of the American public, vastly dwarfs the size of mainstream media or liberal media, if you will. And so in terms of its impact, its reach, its financial heft, and the eyeballs and earballs of Americans that it poisons, right-wing media is a far, far bigger problem than the remaining mainstream media outlets that at least make an attempt at factual basis and even-handed reporting. But other than that, I have no.
Yeah, but I think without question, there are media outlets that do bias against Republicans. More importantly, they just make a good villain, and we need a good villain. And that's what we get with the press more than anything else. They do try to be fair. They're just not always there. Let's move on to something that kind of warms my mind. Democrats seem to have a little bit of drama. According to Axios, what's happening in Texas, the party is now dealing with a full-blown Tea Party-style revolt from its progressive base. Activists are mounting primary challenges, accusing establishment Democrats of being too centrist. I love that. Too soft, too cautious. And Chuck Schumer is already warning its members to brace for ugly primaries. Now, look, going back to the last one, we see all kinds of stories about Republicans in disarray. We see about Republicans in crisis. It was nice to see this one in the stack about Democrats facing their own Tea Party revolt. I sort of feel like it's true. I mean, there's some real problems with your leadership, but Matt, what do you say?
I'd say this is a apples and orangutans comparison here. The Tea Party was an astroturf. That means fake grassroots. See why the phrase is so clever? So clever. It was an astroturf campaign that was funded by a network of right-wing billionaires and advocacy groups funneled through Dick Armey. Can't make this stuff up. The former House Majority Leader Dick Armey, because if you're going to have a Tea Party, you need a Dick Armey. And apparently there's an attempt now by the media that you just finished excoriating to get some drama going and invigorate those eyeballs and earballs by saying, is this a Tea Party revolt on the left? No, this is garden variety. We've seen it for decades and decades. There's a little bit of a split in our Big Tent Democratic Party between, we call them progressives these days, but farther left-leaning voters and more centrist, moderate Democrats. It used to be that the more centrist, moderate Democrats were the vast majority. The left has been in the ascendancy. This is another iteration of that. But is this a widespread or coordinated revolt? Not at all.
See, I don't know. See, I think you have more problems than you think. I mean, if we're being honest, the Democrats, especially your leadership, are kind of weak, uninspired, leaderless, flatlining in an environment driven by personality and spectacle. Look at Hakeem Jeffries, look at Chuck Schumer. They're just uninspiring. You got socialists winning elections across the way. Look, I still think Republicans are getting their butt kicked this year, but my hope, my only hope might be if you guys can nominate some weird far left radical members, maybe we have a chance to pick up some seats.
That's the story here, is that Democrats are really trying to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory by nominating someone who probably is going to be a lot weaker in this race. And when Republicans have massive problems on their side that has them nervous, this is kind of a go-to circular firing squad move from the party I love.
Yes, it is.
I would like to finish up our rundown with a look at the showdown in the Supreme Court this week over whether the president can fire independent agency officials at will. The case involves the firing of the long-serving Federal Trade Commission Commissioner Rebecca Kelly Slaughter. Wonderful graphic name there. And it looks from the signaling, from the live comments from the justices, that this is likely to happen, although they do seem to have some concerns about giving untrammeled authority to any president, especially this president, to fire leaders of, say, the Federal Reserve. Matt, what was your reaction to this?
Look, I fundamentally think that a president should be able to fire people within the executive branch. I just think it's grown too big, too corrupt, too controlled by special interests. I do think it should happen. I think I, like probably you, are a little more concerned when that person is Donald Trump than maybe a traditional Republican. We need to have qualified people. And I think the problem we're seeing right now is the people, and you've talked about this extensively, is people that are put into this administration can't do the job at all, let alone in an effective way. And so when we give this power back to the president, which I think it should be, it makes us a little bit weaker right now.
I'm going to go ahead and agree with you. I actually agree with 99.9% of everything you said. I'd have to find a feather and a candle to go looking for the little bits I don't agree with. I do think that as a matter of principle, it is fair to allow presidents to choose the people who are going to be implementing the policies, which should be the laws passed by Congress within the agencies. But there is a reason that there is a law on the books that insulates certain functions of the federal government from political pressure. Now, if you say to me, maybe the executive branch agencies are too large and too bureaucratic, and in many cases are captured by special interests, I'm not going to dispute that. I'm going to agree with that. I think where we also both agree, though, is that Donald Trump isn't fixing to fix that. He is not trying to make that any better. So what I'd be looking for here in a ruling is a compromise that certainly left inspectors general, who are responsible for oversight within these agencies, with their independence, with their insulation from political pressures, and certain critical functions like the Fed, independent. This idea that it's unitary executive, that is some cockamamie legal you-know-what. I think this sets up a trap because, as you said, if the Supreme Court rules this way and Donald Trump puts his hacks in place, it's going to just mess up his own administration even more. So I don't know.
That's a problem Republicans are facing, is we're spending too much time sort of saying, oh, let Trump do this, let Trump do this. It sets dangerous precedents for the future. And so we got to get a curb on executive authority right now we are starting a new segment this week called Up or Down, where we're just going to quickly run through some topics and give our first impressions up or down.
This is Up and Down, your political pulse check. Who crushed it? Who face planted and who needs a trip to political rehab?
The White House released a new national security strategy, an America First strategy. It also redefines our alliances with Europe. Trump called many European nations decaying, labeling the leaders weak, and severely criticized their immigration and trade policies. So, Matt, Europe, up or down?
Europe is a definite down. Europe is on the downswing after 8 decades of a rock-solid alliance. Our relationships in Europe are in free fall. Trump is calling its culture decaying, its leaders weak, and official U.S. foreign policy now supports right-wing parties, often nationalistic parties in Europe that are highly destabilizing and frequently funded by Russia. Europe, big down.
Yeah, look, I'm down too. Walking away from Europe isn't America's first. It's surrendering the battlefield to Russia and China without a fight. If we stop championing freedom abroad, we stop being America. I'm down on this.
Let's go to FIFA, the world's most corrupt organization. We're coming off of a week where in their big announcement of the World Cup draw, they made up a fake peace prize to give to Donald Trump. They're now being investigated for bias because of all their Trump kiss assery. And they are generally, if it were even possible, but clowning themselves even more. Matt, FIFA, up or down?
I was going to be down, but now I'm up. I love the comedy of this. I love the satire of this. I love that it generates more stories. FIFA giving the Trump prize is the most FIFA thing ever.
I'm a big down. There's a kind of cheese that they make in France. You wrap it in a wet burlap sack and you let it sit there for months until layers of mold start to infiltrate deeper and deeper. And after several months, you clear away all the mold. And inside is this slimy piece of wet, soft cheese that you're supposed to eat. That is what we are generating as FIFA gets moldier and moldier. They're a big down.
Netflix announced a deal to acquire Warner Brothers Discovery Studios in a streaming business. A few days later, Paramount Sundance launched a hostile all-cash bid. The bidding war immediately triggered concerns, media industry stakeholders, unions, antitrust regulators. Matt, up or down on this merger?
It's a down. This is going to be bad for consumers and viewers. If Netflix wins, we know that their business model is to produce high profit slop that gives shareholder value, but not the rest of us as consumers entertainment value. Down.
Yeah, I'm down too. Look, my Netflix subscription has already cost way too much. My Paramount subscription costs way too much. What I'm learning now is I have way too many streaming subscriptions, but I do think competition makes prices better. This consolidation, it's just going to drive up prices already. Affordability, I know may be a con job, but I'm actually feeling the pinch and I'm down.
Let's go to AI. There's a resurgence in stock prices for AI-laden companies after a lot of concern on Wall Street in recent months about whether AI is just another giant tech stock bubble. Donald Trump moved to trump state regulation on AI by having one federal policy, which is extremely permissive. AI, up or down?
I'm going to say down because the other story that came out is apparently Instacart is using my shopping habits to try and increase my prices. They're using AI to do this. I hate a one-size-fits-all approach to everything. I'm down on all this.
Dude, the pandemic's over. You're still Instacarting?
I'm lazy. I don't like to go to the store.
All right. You know what? Most Americans are lazy. That's why I'm going to say AI is up. People love all the AI slop that can be generated in terms of visual images, videos, and answers and talking points and things that seem like they're doing our work for us, even when they're really not. This is going to be a boon to their business model. They are, as far as it goes, up.
Kevin Hassett is long rumored to be the successor for Jerome Powell. Publicly advocated for rate cuts, arguing there's plenty of room to lower interest rates, a stance aligned with Trump's push for cheaper borrowing costs. I've seen one person say, if you like cheap money and booming markets, Hassett is your guy. Matt, Kevin Hassett as the next Fed chair, up or down?
Oh, up, big up. What Donald Trump cares about is auditions on TV. That's all he cares about. And as you saw in the That's Bullshit segment in the very first episode of Political Rehab, Kevin Hassett has shown himself to be an able communicator of Donald Trump's economic bullshit. Now, he's mouthing all the right. He is saying exactly what Trump wants to hear. And I think he's a big up.
I'm also up on it. I do call bullshit on whether or not he'd use his own judgment or political pressure. We all know he's not getting the job if he's not doing exactly what Trump wants to do. By all accounts, he's a smart guy. We'll see what he does.
I want to talk about your girl, the light in your sky, Kamala Harris. She's been on a book tour that's not gone great, but she insists she isn't trying to stoke a discussion about 2028, but she is leaving her options open. Matt, Kamala Harris, up or down?
Oh, I'm up on this. Anytime Kamala Harris is in the news is good for Republicans. They remind us why Democrats lost so badly last year. I think we just got to roll her out. I want to see her on CNN everywhere more often, promote that book.
What you're saying is that you're up because you believe that Kamala Harris is down. Look, I don't want to be unfair. I think she is an able person and politician with admirable values who was handed a steaming pile of political mess with 107 days out from the election and did her level best. Sometimes your best isn't good enough. And unfortunately, in politics, that's the way it goes. It's not fair. Life is not fair. The reality is you're seeing in this reaction to her book tour that the appetite for more Kamala Harris and Democrats' lives is not there. I think she's a down.
Recent poll shows Newsom, favorability in California has risen about 56%. He is raising all kinds of money. He seems to be the front runner for the Democrats coming up. Matt, up or down on Gavin Newsom?
I mean, this one comes as close to a no-brainer, which is also the result of Donald Trump's MRI, as we're going to get in this up-down segment. Over the course of 2025, he has increased his name ID in the Democratic Party. He's increased the number of Democrats who say they support him. He's increased his profile on social media. There's no way to conclude that he's not in a big up coming off of his 2025.
I 100% agree. He is up. He's had a great week. I don't think he's going to be the Democrat nominee. I think his shtick will go weary. Voters will look elsewhere, but it's hard to deny what he has done is given some life to Democrats, some hope as somebody who's figured a way to punch against Trump and still be able to keep doing it and do it with humor. He's up.
Let's talk about the White House ballroom. I'm just going to put it to you, Matt. Ballroom, up or down?
I'm going to go up with the ballroom because this ballroom is the most Trump thing that has ever been a Trump thing. It's like every other project makes this big, flashy, maximalist project. We're going to do this enormous scale, redesigns, ballooning, firing people. It's the reality TV show. It is the conclusion to The Apprentice that I didn't know I wanted. I'm up on this right now because, again, it just keeps giving more humor.
You inspired me, Matt, because your earlier answer on Kamala Harris gives me the exact same feelings. This is so terrible for Donald Trump. The juxtaposition of his opulence and his lack of fundamental human caring for Americans who can't afford food while he's increasing the size of this ballroom. This is a Hindenburg level disaster. And since it's happened to Donald Trump, it's up and I'm up on it.
This week, U.S. forces seized Venezuelan flagged oil tanker in international waters. A major escalation U.S. pressure campaign against Maduro. One person familiar with the seizure said the tanker appeared to be carrying oil to Cuba. When Trump was asked about what we're going to do with the oil, he remarked, I guess we'll keep it. I mean, Matt, are we pirates now? What are you, up and down on this one?
Wow. Down, obviously, on the entire campaign against Venezuela. When you've got John Yoo, the conservative legal academic who helped write these torture memos for President George W. Bush, justifying waterboarding, saying he does not believe these Venezuelan strikes are legal, you know that the whole thing is a mess. So I'm down on Venezuela. But as far as this tanker goes, I don't know. Maybe I'm kind of up. I think this tanker is going to be a flashpoint, which is going to continue to drag Trump down.
I think everybody wants to be a pirate. So I'm kind of up on this one. At least now we know why we're doing things. It is not drugs. It is not protecting democracy. It's oil. I don't think we should be trying to go to war with another country. I don't think invading another country, but I do say if we're going to have sanctions, we need to act on it. So I'm going to say I'm up on this one.
That draws our up and down to a close. And if you feel like you are in the upside down, that's why we do this entire show, Political Rehab. Speaking of which, let's talk about one of the most detoxifying aspects of our show, our very favorite. That's bullshit.
Bullshit. Bullshit. Bullshit. bullshit.
Bullshit.
A bullshit?
If you were paying attention to the government shutdown a couple of months ago, there was one critical issue in America driving it.
Subsidies that help people buy Affordable Care Act health insurance.
Tens of millions of people are going to experience dramatically increased premiums, copays, and deductibles.
Republicans who have mostly railed against the Affordable Care Act for 15 years know privately that this is a huge problem, particularly for them.
93% of those 24 million people are getting federal help paying their health care premiums. More than 3/4 of the people who have ACA plans actually live in states that President Trump won.
This week, Republican senators offered what they said was an alternative to those subsidies.
Everybody up to age 49 gets $1,000 into their health savings account. Those over 49 get $1,500. You can use it for your doctor visit, your x-rays, to see your dentist, your glasses, your prescriptions. This is real medical care.
Unfortunately, what it actually is real bullshit. There are three fundamental problems here. I'm going to very quickly break down why this is a ripoff, a death spiral swindle, and a weird piece of deep bullshit hypnosis that Republicans have put themselves under. Problem one is that the Republican plan is simply a swindle. Instead of our government helping less wealthy Americans afford insurance, they're trying to tempt people by waving some cash in their face. But here's the reality. The Republican plan would force people into high deductible plans, as high as $10,000 for individuals and $21,000 for households. And the cash that they're giving you can't be used to pay for premiums. Health savings accounts are great if you're running to CVS for a prescription or you want to pay out of pocket for a really low-cost service like a basic checkup with your doctor. But it's not a replacement for health insurance because the average cost of a 3-day hospital stay is around $30,000. A commonly prescribed cancer treatment costs $12,000 a month. Fixing a broken leg costs up to $7,500. Medical costs for the average diabetic are over $1,000 a month. An MRI costs $1,300. A chest CT runs over $700. Getting $1,500 and getting forced into a $10,000 or $20,000 high deductible plan, or trying to cover the thousands or tens of thousands of dollars of medical expenses you might rack up out of pocket, would be a catastrophe for all but wealthy families. Problem number two is, even if you think, well, this won't apply to me, I don't qualify for ACA subsidies, what Republicans are doing here sets up the potential for a death spiral. Why? Because of how insurance pooling works.
If insurers group people exposed to similar risks, they can broadly predict the number and size of losses in that group. As only some of the policyholders will suffer a loss in a year, insurers collect the amount of premium from the many that is needed to build up the fund, or pool to pay the claims of the few.
The whole idea of the Affordable Care Act was to mandate that everyone have insurance so that we'd all be in the pool together. But what the Republican plan would do is to force healthier people into high deductible or catastrophic plans, or off health insurance coverage entirely, leaving relatively sicker people concentrated in the more comprehensive plans that they need. That means the remaining risk pool at the gold or silver level would have higher average costs, forcing insurers to raise premiums.
What's a death spiral?
When premiums go up, you tend to lose the healthiest part of your market. People that you're left with are sicker than average, and it means premiums have to go up to account for that. And who does it push out? It pushes out the people that are the most healthy. So you get this sort of unwinding of the market from premium increases and diminished enrollment.
What Republicans have set up here has the serious potential to make prices explode for everyone. But what's really bullshit is issue number three, the way Republicans have hypnotized themselves into a weird zombie hatred of the Affordable Care Act, because it's actually all their idea in the first place. The whole idea for the setup of the ACA came from the Heritage Foundation back in 1989 in a lecture by Stuart Butler, then a health economist there. It's what Mitt Romney used when he put in his Massachusetts plan in the mid-2000s, which became the basis for the ACA. But of course, as soon as Barack Obama adopted it...
When Barack Obama became president in 2009, 45 million Americans were uninsured. By 2016, nearly 20 million previously uninsured people had acquired health care.
They turned against it, especially when he leaned into embracing the label Obamacare. Despite trying to repeal, defund, or gut the Affordable Care Act.
By 2014, Republicans in the House of Representatives had already voted more than 50 times to repeal the measure.
The one thing Republicans have never been able to do is explain the replacement part of their repeal and replace mantra.
I am also calling on this Congress to repeal and replace Obamacare.
Just this week, House Speaker Mike Johnson met with House Republicans to show them ideas for what they might try to offer, and the bottom line was they have no idea. One of their bullet points simply said, innovation. Great, if I break my arm, give me some of that innovation. Look, it's easy to go after insurance companies. I'm not trying to pretend that they're heroes, but if we're going to have health insurance be a business in America, if we're going to have healthcare be a business in America, then this is the best idea that conservatives and liberals have come up with to try to make the system work and to give people the healthcare that should be a basic right. What Republicans are offering is not our birthright, but a mess of pottage. And that is bullshit.
Hey, great segment as always. Look, it is always easier to oppose something than to come up with your own plan. And look, Republicans made a serious mistake by failing to repeal Obamacare when they had a chance. Now, look, that's a great talking point, and that's the one I would advise every Republican candidate to use. But those are
right.
just
That's what you say. That's what you say when you're in public or you're talking to your clients. But what about?
I mean, that's
just the two of us.
Right. Now it's just two of us. Look, I'll tell you, that's just a great way to win a primary. It's a great way to raise a lot of money. But if I take my campaign hat off,
right,
throw my analyst hat back on, I would say we are stuck in a situation that needs to be fixed. We're staring down a problem of our own doing. My problem with Obamacare, and why I take a little bit of exception in a little bit of what you said here, is that it dramatically expanded federal government. Mm-hmm. But the problem that I think we have is we keep talking about Obamacare like it's 2009, like Marty and Doc are going to come down in a DeLorean and take us back. We refuse to deal with the situation at hand. Healthcare costs are too high right now. Many Americans depend on subsidies to make it workable. And we got to do something with what we have. And the truth is, there are conservative pieces of this plan that Heritage and other Republicans had offered prior to Obamacare coming into law. And right. I think the issue here is just that we got to fix this. Talking points and the repeal it, like I started this with, isn't real. It's imaginary to raise money.
If we took a stare decisis approach to this is settled law, which honestly would be probably in the long run better for Republicans. And we just thought about, look, what can we agree on to make things better, not for the purpose of winning the next race, but for the purpose of actually dealing with the issue. There are ideas that have momentum, that have interest from both parties in Congress right now. There is Representative Brian Fitzpatrick, including bipartisan allies, have introduced a bill that would extend the tax credits in the ACA for the next 2 years, but would put in some income limits and fraud protections. If what Republicans are concerned about is we're giving away too much, and maybe we're not targeting it well enough to people who really need it, and maybe there is some fraud, maybe there is some waste, okay, that's a problem that we could solve. You could expand the use of health savings accounts. Our mutual friend, Alicia Prescott-Zen, has said that what she doesn't like is the loss of individual consumer control. Now, that's part and parcel of the individual mandate. It's something that makes the whole system go. But that doesn't mean we couldn't expand the use of health savings accounts in a way that would make it work, not just for the wealthier people who tend to take advantage of them, but for less wealthy people. That's another bipartisan idea that we could do here that would actually make things better.
And I think you're hitting on the key piece here. And the problem with healthcare and the problem with Obamacare is that it feels, at least for right now, Republicans have stopped trying to solve this problem. There are some, and you mentioned a couple here, but we're more interested in playing the political blame game and hoping that it doesn't blow up. It's a classic Trump tactic right now. But if we just say it loud enough and long enough, maybe we can get somebody else to just be so confused and think that it's another problem. But the reality is, if we don't solve this problem, millions of Americans suffer. From a pure electoral standpoint, you're not going to win elections like that. And we don't want anybody to suffer. Republicans are not looking to have Americans lose their health care. We're just trying to find ways to make it cheaper. Where the rubber meets the road is that we refuse to act on it because it's politically more advantageous. And when I say that, I mean money. We can raise a ton of money by bashing Obamacare. And that's sort of, I think, the problem within our system. I think that's the problem of kind of the modern era, is that we don't roll up our sleeves and look and trying to figure out how to solve these problems.
100%. 100%.
We should, as Republicans, and this was a doctrine for such a long time, is we push the most conservative agenda we can get through. The reason Reagan was so successful is not that Tip O'Neill agreed with him. It was that he could sit there, have these conversations, they could battle, and he could push conservative legislations through that both sides could agree to. And we're just not doing it right now.
I completely agree. One of the things that Republicans are interested in is more price transparency and other mechanisms that can help bend the cost curve, lower costs. And believe it or not, RFK Jr., I wrote about this. Search for it on worthknowing.substack.com. I wrote about this. I gave credit to RFK Jr. for an actually good, productive idea that can bend the long-term cost curve. There's bipartisan interest in that. So there are things that we can do. It just involves a decision to actually do them and not just follow kind of the Trump line of, this is great for fundraising and our next 30-second campaign ad. And on that hopeful note, let's get to our dose of hope.
I struggled with this one this week because it was going to go a million different directions, but here's where I landed. We are 1 year out from the midterm elections, which means we officially enter the season where every comedian in America believes it's their civic duty to take a swing at politics. Now, most of the time, it's the same tired routine. As a Republican, I'm used to sitting through monologues that feel less like comedy and more like extended group therapy sessions for Democrats. And look, I'm no fan of Donald Trump. I've said that plenty of times. But here's the difference between political humor and a relentless, joyless Trump bashing that passes for entertainment these days. At some point, the punchline stops being funny and starts feeling like background noise. And the worst offender is usually Saturday Night Live. Too often their sketches read like they were written by a writer's room trying to impress itself, not an actual audience. It's predictable, partisan, and frankly lazy. Last Saturday was different. For once, SNL delivered something I thought clever and genuinely funny in a Pentagon press conference cold open where Colin Jost played an over-the-top, hyper-macho Hegseth defending controversial military strikes, complete with energy drink swagger and absurd bravado. And they didn't just poke fun at himself. They crafted a real bit. The sketch even wove in an exaggerated sleeping Trump, a physical gag that worked better than most of the usual monologue riffs. It felt like the writers were trying to be generally funny instead of just scoring points. It's my dose of hope because politics is filled with humor. Politicians do dumb things. Politicians say dumb things. And it's our responsibility as Americans to laugh when they do it. So whether you're a Republican, Democrat, or Independent, nobody in public life is above a good joke, and the country is healthier when we remember that. That's my dose of hope.
Major golf clap to SNL and major golf clap to you. That Colin Jost skit was really next level. I urge people to go out and see it. It's a keeper. It was so great. My dose of hope here is also a little bit sports related. Speaking of golf clap, the U.S. men's national soccer team, the USMNT, is off to the World Cup. The World Cup final technically is going to be on U.S. soil again. The first time since the sublime 1994 World Cup that birthed an enthusiastic outburst of fandom for soccer in the United States of America. And the U.S. is currently ranked number 14 in the world in FIFA's corrupt, but probably somewhat accurate men's world rankings. Last week, we were placed into a draw for the upcoming World Cup with Paraguay, Australia, and a team to be named later. While I note that we have beaten both Paraguay and Australia in recent friendly match play. These are highly ranked, strong world powerhouses, and we just kicked their asses. Now, some naysayers will say, these are friendly matches. They didn't have their full strength team. We had not our A team, not even really our B team. We brought our B-C+ team, and we still trucked these guys. We have the best generation of players that we've ever seen in this country. Christian Pulisic, one of the top players in Europe right now. Weston McKennie, Gio Reyna, Tyler Adams, Jedi Robinson. He actually prefers to go by Jedi than his given name, Anthony. We have a delightful cast of characters. And the best part is this team, They look like America. They are e pluribus unum. Forebears come from around the world. They're tough. They're proud. They're wonderful Americans, many of whom had a choice to play for their ancestral countries, but chose America because of their love for this country. And we can feel it right back to echo one of the most iconic calls in U.S. soccer history. Go, go, USA. And that's what I say to all of us. We can start to get excited. We can dream. We can think big as we enter this summer. Go, go, USA.
USA, USA, USA.
And on that patriotic note, for Matt, I'm Matt. We hope you've been